So if you're a fan of Hamilton, you are going to love Mexodus. This groundbreaking musical combines history with hip-hop to explore the untold stories of enslaved people on the Underground Railroad to Mexico. Brian Quijada and Nigel D. Robinson give tour de force performances while using live looping to create a musical in real time. Mexodus is now playing at Mosaic Theater on 8th Street Northeast through June 15th. Get tickets at mosaictheater.org. That's mosaictheater.org. Today on CityCast DC, two Capitol Hill area elementary schools, Maury and Miner, could merge thanks to DC's redistricting of school lines. And some parents aren't exactly thrilled about it. Lauren Lumpkin, education reporter for The Washington Post, has been following the story. Today's Tuesday, May 28th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. So, Lauren, there is a suggestion to merge two elementary schools downtown together near the Eastern Market area. Why is this happening?
So this is a recommendation that's come out of the Deputy Mayor for Education's ongoing boundary study. This has been in the works for several months now. They're actually going to be wrapping up really shortly. But basically, every 10 years, the city comes and looks at all the school boundaries and figures out how we can make things more equitable, how we can improve diversity, how we can fill schools that have, a lot of empty seats and reduce crowding at others. So basically, the city is looking at these two elementary schools in the Capitol Hill area, and they just have very different demographics. And so this idea is hoping to increase diversity at both of these schools, one that has a lot of white children involved, one that has a lot of Black children enrolled, and a lot of lower income families, and trying to make the schools a bit more diverse in the area.
So you've mentioned that the schools are demographically very different. What are these two schools like?
So Maury Elementary, that's one of the schools. And so they have a lot of students. Enrollment has been growing over the last several years. About 60% of the students that are enrolled are white. And they have this high wait list. If you kind of look at, there's a lot of students who are in Boundary go to attend the school, but there's also demand from other parts of the city to get into the school. Miner Elementary, 80% of the students are Black. About 2/3 of the students fall into this category called at risk, which includes students who are homeless or in the foster care system. They receive public assistance, and enrollment has been falling over the last couple of school years.
So how are the Maury parents feeling about all this?
So a lot of the Maury parents are very happy with the community that they have at the school, and honestly, they don't want that to change. But some of the things that have come up are, for example, Maury, as is kind of typical with more advantaged children, they score higher on standardized tests, and there's some anxiety about whether pairing the schools could bring down averages. And then also there is some concern about just who would teach at the school, who would be the principal. Miner, through no fault of its own, has had a lot of turnover in the principal's office, and Maury traditionally has had more stable leadership, and some parents at Maury are concerned about, what a school would look like if Miner doesn't necessarily have that same type of stability.
I can understand that. Conversely, what are Miner parents saying? Like, how are they telling you that they're feeling about this potential change?
They are generally, and I will say that both across school communities, there is a wide diversity of opinions, but I think kind of generally on the Miner side, parents have viewed this as an opportunity to improve their school and improve Maury as well. This is kind of a segregated area, and this plan would potentially reduce that segregation, which I think is something that I think everyone really wants. But for some of the Miner parents I talked to said that this would maybe give their kids access to different clubs. For example, one Miner parent who I spoke to said that, we have cheerleading, we have basketball, and this year the basketball teams aren't playing. And so this could be an opportunity to have access to more after school activities, more activities during the school day. Miner has a lot of leadership issues in terms of having a permanent principal. And so some of the Miner parents also view this as an opportunity to maybe have a more kind of stable school environment.
Sign up to The Economist for in-depth curated expert analysis of world events and topics ranging from business and culture to science and technology. You'll get the weekly digital edition, online-only articles, curated newsletters on politics, the markets, science, culture, and China, and full access to The Economist Podcast Plus. The Economist is independent journalism for independent thinking. Go to economist.com and get your first month free.
Families have a lot going on. Let Ollie help manage the mental load with new cognitive help supplements for everyone 4 and up, like delicious Lolly Focus Pops or Lolly Mellow Pops for kids. And for parents, try 3 new Brainy Chews to help you focus, chill out, or get energized. Find these cognitive health buddies for the whole fam at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
So I know Miner is a school that receives federal funding. How would a merger potentially affect this?
That's a really good question and something that is on the minds of a lot of the Miner parents. What would happen too? So they get Title I funding, which is federal funding that goes to schools that have a large population of lower income families. What would happen if the schools merge and all of a sudden you have a school community and the share of low income students looks different because you have a different school community? Would they still get that funding? Would they still get some of the programming that comes with that funding? Would they still get some of the benefits that teachers who teach at Title I schools get? I don't know. And that's something that has come up again and again from the Miner parents. Some of the programs and funding that they do benefit from, would that change as a result of this pairing? It's a really big question on a lot of people's minds.
What does the funding currently go toward?
Specifically at Miner, I'm not totally sure, but generally schools can use Title I funding to offer programming. Teachers get certain benefits from teaching at Title I schools, sometimes in some cases, like some types of student loan forgiveness, generally kind of like programming and teachers and after school things like that.
Got it. That's really clarifying. And I'm curious, what typically happens to all of these kids after elementary school? Like, do they stay within DCPS? Do they go to private schools? Like, what ends up happening to most of them?
Yeah, everyone kind of does different things. I mean, some of the students will stay in DCPS and they'll go to the local middle school. Some go to charters. And we see this kind of across the city that there tends to be kind of a drop off in participation in neighborhood schools once kids get to middle school. They could go to private schools. So really kind of at the middle school stage, people kind of branch out and, maybe the people you went to school with, for kindergarten and 4th grade and all the elementary school grades, maybe you're not going to school with them anymore. But, in a lot of cases, they do end up going to the local middle school together. So they could be on the same academic journey for the rest of their, kind of K-12 lives.
I know this survey that you're talking about, it happens every 10 years. I'm curious, has this survey ever recommended that the two schools merge, or like school mergers in general? Is this a thing that they've suggested before?
Specifically, so with Maury and Miner, this was raised in a survey in 2017 that wasn't related to the boundary study. But in general, the idea of pairing schools, like DC has other paired schools exist throughout the country. So it's not necessarily like a new thing or something that's never been thought of before. But for this specific community coming out of this boundary study, like the pairing of these two schools is something that I don't think the city has considered, at least like not on this level before.
What do you see as the future of this possible merger? Like, do you see it happening?
Well, the DC Council held a series of performance oversight hearings for a bunch of agencies, including the education agencies. Deputy Mayor for Education, Paul Kine, was answering questions from lawmakers, and this pairing did come up. And he said that moving forward with the recommendations, they're looking at potentially encouraging DCPS to continue having conversations about the merger, which kind of indicated to me that maybe this explicit pairing might not be on the table, but continuing to talk about the pairing might be the way that the city moves forward. There's also a recommendation to form a task force to look at this pairing, and then in the meantime, potentially require the school to reserve some of its lottery seats for lower income children as a way to increase diversity on the campus. So, it's hard to say exactly right now where things are going to end up, but my sense is that we're going to look at maybe a task force coming together to talk about this, the feasibility of this plan, as opposed to, the next couple of school years, seeing these schools physically come together.
And is there a timeline that folks should be thinking about or keeping in mind when thinking about this plan?
Yeah, so for the task force, the recommendation was that this group wouldn't meet until 2027, which is a few years off. Something that's been stressed over and over again is leadership stability. This task force, or whether the plan moves forward, it wouldn't be able to happen until Miner has stable leadership. But something that I've heard from the Miner community is that maybe this isn't necessarily fair to them. I mean, the students, the parents, they can't control who the principal is, how long they stay. They kind of look at DCPS needs to make sure that they have a leader there who wants to say and who wants to better the community and who has the support to do that for the long term. And some of the parents feel as if they're being punished for something that's really out of their control, totally not their fault, because they haven't had consistent leadership.
Well, if there are parents in the area who are listening and they have feedback or they want to share their thoughts on this, are there opportunities for the public to weigh in on what's going on?
Yeah, so the Boundary Study, the Deputy Mayor for Education's group, they have held several town halls. They have had meetings in the Miner and Maury communities. They've had a few meetings at both of the schools, and I hope there will still be some time for the public to weigh in.
So, Lauren, we're talking about two specific schools in DC, but what's the big picture here for how folks can put this in context for what it means for the city as a whole?
Okay, so for me, the larger kind of theme here is school integration and school diversity. Definitely really interesting. This is the 70th year anniversary, this Brown versus Board. But across the country, you still see that schools are very segregated. And in a city like DC, you can see it all over the place. It's a result of housing segregation. It's a result of decades of policies that have kind of put us in this position where the schools do not always look like the community that we live in. The schools don't always reflect the city that we live in. And so I think that as a journalist, I am going to be continuing to look at these efforts to integrate schools, make schools more diverse and more equitable. But for me, it's always really interesting to see kind of like, on the face, yes, we can all agree that diverse schools are important, but when solutions come in or when ideas come in, when policies come in to kind of correct that, where does the support go? What kind of concerns exist? Is there really the appetite to fix this kind of long-standing question? I think those are kind of things that in the back of my mind, and I think that maybe things that parents and the public should keep in mind as we continue to see these things pop up.
Lauren, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, and before you go, I have a very small favor to ask. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out a lot if you took it. You can take the survey at citycast.fm/survey. It'll only take 7 minutes max. Yep, we actually timed it out. And it helps us learn about you so that we can give you a better show. That's citycast.fm/survey. Survey takers also have a chance to win a $250 Visa gift card and some super cool CityCast swag. That's citycast.fm/survey. Even if you took the survey last year, please take it again since we can't use last year's data anymore. That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.